Coming up on This Week in Radio Tech, Jim Offerdahl. I've been trying to get this guy on the show literally for 10 years. 10 years! Well, now he's collecting Social Security and he figures he can't hurt his career too much. Jim Offerdahl on really good engineering, solid engineering, and tips, modern tips about engineering, too. I'm excited to talk about Jim Offerdahl, and you should be, too. Coming up next on TWiRT.
This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you by Broadcasters General Store with outstanding service, savings, and support. Online at bgs.cc. By Broadcast Bionics with the Bionics Studio, including talk show control, social media, and visual radio. Broadcast Bionics brings exceptional audience engagement to radio and TV. By Angry Audio. Audio problems disappear when you get angry at angryaudio.com. By Nautel, worry-free transmission you can count on with outstanding control, reliability, efficiencies, and Nautel's unmatched 24/7 customer support. Online at nautel.com. And by Max Connect Wireless, prioritized high-speed internet service designed for transmitter sites and remote broadcasts.
Hey, welcome into This Week in Radio Tech, the show where we talk about everything from the microphone to that light bulb at the top of the tower, and sometimes the amazing precipitation that we get in association with weather systems that come through and affect our broadcasting. We try not to let it affect, but sometimes it does. Hey, I'm Kirk Harnack in the Telos Alliance studio in Nashville, Tennessee, and it's been a good day here in Nashville. And weather-wise, it's a little chilly. No, it's not too bad actually. We're up to 54 degrees. Now it's going to get a lot colder here, and maybe a little snow over the weekend. Chris Tarr, hopefully he'll be checking in. As I said, he's getting ready for Snowmageddon, and he's been getting a few sites. Make sure that they're ready to go. Generators are tested. Everything is as ready as it can be for when they maybe can't get to the sites or not easily. So we wish Chris well, and maybe he'll be checking in during the show. Meanwhile, our guest is with us, and he's also up in the usually frozen north, and that is Jim Offerdahl. Jim, welcome in. It's good to see you on the show.
Hi, Kirk. Thanks for having me. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon. And when I say you're up in places that are often frozen, where would you be coming to us from?
Well, I am in the city of Fosston, Minnesota, and for those who, and probably most don't know exactly where that is, we're about 120 miles from the Canadian border, and we're about 80 miles from the North Dakota border on U.S. Highway 2. And if you look at the map of Minnesota, Highway 2 runs from Grand Forks to the southwest to Duluth. So we're a little closer to North Dakota than Lake Superior, but we're up in the frozen north, that's for sure. And actually, right now, I just checked when you brought up temperature. Let's see, it's 4 degrees here.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, wow.
And let's see how cold it's going to get tonight. We're going to get to maybe 4 below, 7 below the next night, 9 below the next night, 13 below Saturday and Sunday and Monday. So it's going to be cold, but it's actually been very nice. Like I said in our warm up, it could feel like a short winter. I don't want to risk my luck, but saying that, but I did. So we'll hope that the weather continues to hold. We don't have a lot of snow. Normally we have maybe 1 to 2 feet of snow on the ground by this time of year. So we're quite happy that we don't have that. I like a little snow, grew up in it, but it's nice to have roads that are ice-free and sidewalks that aren't slippery. So,
you know, if you head just a little bit west over to, say, Minot, North Dakota, they're down below zero over there.
Yeah.
Montana as well. Yeah.
We go straight down Highway 2 to Montana and service clients out there. Yeah.
It's even a little chilly way down south in Brownsville, Texas. They're looking at about 78 right now, and Miami 72. So that's
wow.
I mean, it's probably pretty normal for them, but still,
I just spoke with someone that came home from Florida the other day and said it was cool, and I'll be down there in February. So I hope it warms up a little bit there, but it'll be warmer than it is here.
My wife is from the Dominican Republic, and I checked on the temperature there yesterday, and it was a nice 84 degrees. So
that's perfect.
Yeah. Oh, well, can't go yet, but we will be. Hey, well, as I said, welcome into the show. Jim Offerdahl is our guest today. Chris Tarr is scheduled to be in at home in his home studio, but he's, like I said, been getting ready for Snowmageddon. So we'll see if Chris can show up. Hey, we're going to get into it with Jim Offerdahl in a few minutes. Jim does engineering across the cold climate of Minnesota and North Dakota and a few other places, and we're going to be talking to Jim about doing a good job with engineering and keeping not only clients happy, radio stations, but that in turn makes the radio stations reliable for their listeners. Jim I got to talk to Jim for about an hour yesterday, and it was just a delightful conversation. And it's when I talk to Jim and the attitude that Jim has about broadcast engineering, I'm reminded a lot of our friend Mark Persons and his attitude about broadcast engineering. So I think there's a lot of similarities there, and there probably should be. That mindset seems to come with a lot of folks in that part of the country, and I think it's refreshing and good. So we're going to have a good conversation with Jim coming up. This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by Nautel, and I want to mention to you very quickly that Nautel really supports our broadcast industry with a lot of education, seminars, webinars, white papers, videos, things like that. And I'll go ahead and talk about their GV series of transmitters. In fact, the new GV2 series of transmitters, they have some real technology enhancements in the GV2. It's the successor to the GV series, like a new IQ interface card, a new HTML AUI that is built in now. You get an embedded compute engine with 10 times more processing power than before, and that means you can have an Omnia processor built in to the Nautel GV2. How about that? It has optimized power supplies. They are really slick, a nice design. Solid state storage inside, so if you get disconnected from the rest of the world, you can still keep transmitting your radio station. And they have a virtualization in there as well. Ask your Nautel rep about how that works. Just so many good benefits. Also, you can just plug audio into it and get FM and HD. So everything you need to do HD is also built into this transmitter, and that is really cool. And that also means, by the way, that you don't get the drift between your HD1 and your FM signal. You set it once, you forget it, and it works fantastic. Oh, LiveWire goes into it as well with no additional hardware needed. So check it out from Nautel, the Nautel GV2. Really appreciate Nautel supporting and sponsoring not only This Week in Radio Tech, but also us as engineers in the broadcast industry. If you get kind of plugged into Nautel, you can look good, be smart for your radio station clients or your radio station. All right, Jim Offerdahl is our guest. Jim, do I have to address you as the Honorable Jim Offerdahl? Seeing your political position, tell me about that.
Well, first of all, I don't consider it a political position. I am mayor of my hometown of Boston, Minnesota, and have been since 2006. Yeah, and have served on the city council since 2002 when I was first elected to that. So, it's the town I grew up and was raised in, lived away for about 17 years, came home, and never had any idea that I would get involved in anything like that as life progressed. But the opportunity came up and I took it, and I do have a lot of fun doing it. It's my way of giving back to the public. I never served in the military, and I'd never served on any boards or committees of any substance before that. But now for over 20 years, I've given that service to my hometown of about a little over 1,400 people, and Boston's a wonderful town. And if anyone ever happens to be driving through on U.S. Highway 2, look me up and I'll give you the mayor's tour.
Okay. Well, now, hey, listen, since you and I talked yesterday, I had a little chat with your opponent, and he said you only won because you're overmodulating. Is that true?
Yeah, well, that I was pretty loud. Yeah.
You are the second mayor that we've had as a guest on the show, because Alex Roman, who's a chief engineer in New York City, market number one. He, until recently, actually, until about 6 months ago, he was the mayor of Verona Township, New Jersey. So we're delighted we'll see if we can have a mayor on every year. How about that?
There you go. Well, and I know I can think of a station owner here in Minnesota that's also his own engineer, and he's served on the city council of his community for many years. So, I think maybe they go hand in hand.
I think it's a pretty small club. People who are broadcast engineers and mayors. That's probably
there you go. Probably pretty limited. As we know, broadcast engineers are pretty limited too. So makes it Uh-huh.
So, Jim, back in the early to mid '80s, I hung out my shingle as a contract engineer. I ended up, over about a 10 or 11 year period building up a business. We ended up engineering for about, not full-time engineering for 100 stations, but we answered to about 100 radio stations. I guess probably, 15 or so, that considered us, their regular, we would stop by and do regular maintenance. What was it that turned you onto the idea of not working for one station, but, working for, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 stations? How'd you get into this business of contract engineering?
Contract engineering. Well, a good segue from your introduction of me when you brought up Mark Persons. Mark Person set me up on a blind date with a gentleman that had taken over as an interim manager of a radio station that had known each other for quite some time. And that gentleman wanted Mark to do his work in Grand Forks, North Dakota. And Mark decided that was a little far for him to travel and give good support from Brainerd. But he happened to know this young buck at the time that didn't know a whole lot, but Mark was teaching him. And he set that fellow and myself up at a blind date at a transmitter site in a little community in Minnesota called Nimrod. And I really say that as it is the truth. He introduced us, and he didn't tell me what he was up to when I came. I don't know if he told Jack was his name, that what he was up to there either, but he basically pointed to me and said, "This is the guy you want to have do the work." And I go, "Really? Well, gee, I'm not a contract engineer." And I remember going home and talking to my wife and struggling with the thought of doing that a bit, but before long decided I'd give it a try. So first client in Grand Forks, North Dakota in 2005. I'd been an employee engineer for the then owners of the radio station here in Foston for a few years, and decided to give it a try, and now have expanded that to radio stations throughout central northern Minnesota and most of North Dakota. In fact, my son and I have done some work at a 10,000-foot peak in the Sierra Mountains in California. Very unique situation there, but so we get around a little bit.
Yeah, in fact, I was going to ask if you travel much to do engineering work outside of your regular area, and obviously you do some of that. How do you decide to answer yes or no when somebody either in your area or somebody way outside your area says, "Hey, I've got something that maybe you can do"? How do you make that decision?
Well, it's hard to say no.
Yeah.
So I evaluate their situation, and if they really truly need me, we've really always went to one that was a drive, considered still in our immediate service territory, in that we'll drive there. The only one that we've done outside of driving and flown to is this one out in California. But that was a one-off trip, and we may go back sometime. But there's local guys out there that are supporting them. But it's hard to say no, especially when it's within a driving distance. My rule has become, as long as we can drive to the site within a day's drive, we'll consider it. So, it's hard to say no to someone that's desperate and needs transmitters fixed and put back on the air, and that's happened. So the answer is I can't say no.
I'm going to guess that for your regular clients, if you're anything like I was when I was a contract engineer, and like I guess most are now, if it's your regular client, no matter what's wrong, you're going to take a stab at it and probably get the job done. You also probably know your limitations and know when it's time to call somebody else in. But confirm or deny that supposition. But also, what do you consider your real strengths? Like if somebody calls out of your area and says, I need help with X, and your answer is, I know exactly how to take care of that for you, and I'm really good at it, and I'll be out there, versus, that's not really in our wheelhouse.
Well, at this point in time, back in the early days, there was a lot of limits, and that was one of the things that my mentor, Mark Persons, taught me was know your limit. Jim, if you're not sure, you give me a call anytime, day or night. I'll get out of bed if you're out of the site. And of course, there was a lot of that back 20 years ago, a little less these days because more and more clients are getting backups and it's not as urgent then. But so very true on knowing your limits. And in any case, that's something I learned long ago. Now today, it's a little different. My expertise, and I should say that I have my son who's been working with me for 10 years, and he's still learning, as I was 10 years, and I'm still learning. When you're young, you think you know it all, and then you get a little older and you realize you never will know it all. And that's just a fact of life. But I feel like with the fellow, my son and Mark Anderson, who works for us, we've got a good team that can get just about anything done in broadcast engineering. Limits end up with maybe some more complicated AM broadcast systems, but I'm pretty AM savvy. For example, I work with number of directionals, supporting them as a 20-year-old engineering veteran. Haven't built a new directional, so I haven't built one from the ground up, but we've rebuilt some. And when we've done that, we call in the experts to do the tune-up. So in a case like that, we'll call in someone for that. But honestly, I'm trying to think of. It's rare when I'll tell you a little story. We had a transmitter, solid state, that needed some pretty major disassembly, and the client didn't have a backup transmitter. And I'd never disassembled this relatively new, maybe 20 years old, and in the world of AM radio, that's relatively new, but I'd never taken one completely apart, and it needed to be pretty well disassembled to do the repair. And I was afraid of that because, again, no backup. And I thought, what's going to happen if I get in deep and find out it's going to... I worked out a very worthwhile deal with the manufacturer to send a service tech up to that had done it. And there's probably one other case where in the years past, I got into a situation where I just wasn't comfortable, and in particular, the mechanical aspect of it, taking 100 screws out and making sure you know how to get the assembly out without damaging it, that kind of thing. So otherwise, we don't do towers. I don't climb towers. You do. I don't. So we work with some good tower crews in the area for that kind of thing. But the rest, we pretty much do it all.
Yeah, I don't officially climb towers, and I used to pretty regularly, scamper up to check something or carry something lightweight up the side of the tower. Nothing heavy. Actually, almost only once did I ever even use a pulley, block and tackle at the top of the tower or at wherever we were pulling something up to. The rest of the time, it's if I couldn't throw it on my belt and carry it up myself, I wasn't going to do it. It's amazing. Back before I knew about safety equipment, my safety device to go around the tower and cinch off there was a piece of ski rope. So that probably wasn't the safest thing around. I got the whole harness now, and the hard hat and and all that kind of stuff, but I rarely use it.
Well, I'll tell you a little story that now you've probably gone up to some pretty good heights. I think you have. I've gone up a tower since I've been in broadcast engineering to maybe 100 feet. But I decided probably a decade or better ago that I was too old to keep doing that. So the professionals are called for that. But in my younger days, prior to my broadcast engineering career, and I've spent my whole life really in electronics, technical service, ran a consumer electronics business, and ended up doing television reception systems. Started with, and it's towers for consumers. And so I used to stack self-supporting towers, 68, 64 feet to the top, I think, if I remember, and put antennas on them. That's it. Never gone up much higher than that, actually putting a tower up. But I think once or twice, maybe up to 100 feet on one that I remember since I've been an engineer, but not going to do that anymore. That's for the guys that know what they're doing, have the tools, and are well trained.
So we're talking to Jim Offerdahl of Offerdahl Broadcast Services, Engineering Services in Foston. Did I get that right? Foston?
You did. Perfect.
Foston, yes. Minnesota.
Everyone thinks that I say Boston when I say it. No,
it's close. Yeah, it's close. Hey, well, so we've gotten to know Jim a little bit, and we're going to take a quick commercial break here from one of our sponsors. But when we come back, I want to hear from Jim more about his areas of expertise. What advice, what stories he might have in repairing this, or what he learned from repairing that, or coming upon a situation where we can get Jim to share some hard-earned knowledge with us that may save you or me some trouble next time we come across a similar situation. And I know that between Jim and his crew, they've got plenty of experiences. And it's nice when you can say, "Well, I learned something about this from that." Also, Jim later on in the show is going to have a pretty cool announcement for us. We're going to drop a name here later on in the show that I think you're going to want to hear about. So hang on, stay tuned. Our show This Week in Radio Tech is brought to you in part by our friends over in England at Broadcast Bionics. And I love these people. They are so clever, so smart, and they make the coolest stuff for radio broadcasters to make your radio so much better, to make your programming better, and to give us engineers, make us look good when we install this stuff. Let's check it out and hear this word from Broadcast Bionics.
Welcome to the Bionic Studio. The Bionic Studio brings all audience interaction to the fingertips of a production team in radio, TV, and podcast. Our workflow-led system is working 24/7 around the world for small broadcasters and national and international networks. Our telephony module, Bionic Talk Show, allows cost-effective centralization, remote operation, scalability, and resilience across an entire network of stations, but at the same time is used in single-studio self-op environments. Social media curation and activity is now considered a broadcast-critical part of programming. Bionic Social means the studio isn't overwhelmed with a wall of interaction from an ever-growing number of social platforms. We combine SMS, MMS, and email together with a speech-to-text service for listeners using smart speakers. We enable studio teams to curate, filter, and display all platforms in one place, and post text, images, and video content to multiple platforms in one operation. Effortless collection of video content with Bionic Director has helped position some of the world's most successful stations as leaders in viral content, generating appointments to listen and free marketing via retweets and shares. Bionic Contest enables end-to-end tracking of on-air competitions, live reads, and prizes. These could be on-air contests, automated SMS entry, or online. Anywhere, and Skype TX for Radio brings high-quality audio and video contribution into the studio with ease. No need for dedicated PCs to run different applications. Everything is controlled within the Bionic Studio UI, and incoming connections are visible to users along with all other platforms. Our codec integration enables connection, algorithm configuration, and directory to a wide range of IP and ISDN codecs. The Bionic Studio, a unique suite of products designed to enable your talent to work smarter.
Love this stuff from Broadcast Bionics, including the Camera One system, their phone system, the Phone One. They make all kinds of software and other gear that works with Telos Alliance gear. You saw in their video there an Axia Fusion console. Of course, it works with the new Axia Quasar console as well. Love this stuff, and I really mean that. I've been to their facility, their development and programming facility over in England, and what a great bunch of people there. And they take their equipment and software out to radio stations, big stations in the UK, BBC, for example, Global Radio, Bauer, and test it out, make it better so that you and I can benefit from that. So check it out from Broadcast Bionics at bionic.co.uk or bionics.co.uk. Their links are in our show notes. Thanks a lot. All right. Hey, we're talking to Jim Offerdahl on This Week in Radio Tech. Chris Tarr may be along if he can scoot on home through the snow there near Mukwonago, Wisconsin. We hope he's okay and keeps it between the ditches. I'm Kirk Harnack in Nashville, Tennessee, and Jim Offerdahl is here from Foston, Minnesota. Jim, I wonder if you could spend the next few minutes sharing with us some engineering wisdom. What are some of the cool or good things that you've learned? Maybe the rest of us know it already. Maybe it's a complete shock and surprise. So,
Kirk, I'm sure that many of the experienced engineers out there have run into the same things I have. But for anyone that hasn't, there's a few things that I've taken note of. When I first started 20 years ago, there was still a lot of tube-based transmitters out there. And honestly, there still is. There's, in our client base, there's more tube transmitters than there is solid state. That's changing every day. My guys commissioned another new Nautel solid state transmitter today. In fact, at the same site that Mark Person set me up on my blind date to get me into contract engineering. They just replaced a Continental 816 there that's probably well over 30 years old, maybe heading on 40. So I think about the Continentals because when I took over many of the clients that Mark had, which, by the way, I have to say that I owe Mark Persons my career in broadcast engineering. He mentored me from day one, and as he worked towards retirement, came to me and said, Jim, this one's a little far away. Would you like to start helping them? So that's how I progressed. And the fleet that Mark was servicing at the time was a lot of Continental 816s. And one tip I have for anyone with Continental 816s, and especially if you have more than one of them, and I have clients that had numerous ones, and one at a time, the old Continentals come out and probably aren't going to get put back in service, but save some parts. And my tip on if there's only one part that you save out of a Continental 816, whether it's for yourself or another engineer that needs one, that I have been unable to find are the 3 RPM Hurst motors that are motors with brakes that Continental uses to raise and lower power and to raise and lower filament voltage. And that same motor also adjusts the PA tuning and loading. So those are worth a fortune. I remember the last time I could even buy one from Continental. I can't remember. It's maybe been 8-10 years ago. They were over $1,000 new. Well, as old ones have been decommissioned, I've started to box them up, and boy, have they come in handy. And one of the things you asked me about, Kirk, was, what are my passions? And I decided, I didn't tell you this yesterday, but one of them is keeping old gear working. And there's nothing more than I love when there's a transmitter like an old Continental that's running good, but something fails, and like one of these motors, and then a guy has the part or can get the part to fix it and keep it on the air and not have a client have to spend, many tens of thousands or more of dollars buying a new transmitter when they really don't have to, because, a lot of broadcasters today do need to watch the dollars. I'll say most of my clients are all of my clients are good business people. I was talking actually again with Mark the other day, Mark Persons, and we shared our stories about, clients that don't pay bills. And I told him I've never had one in my 20 years that hasn't paid me. And Mark shared the story that the only loss he ever had over 40 plus years of engineering was less than $1,000. So,
Wow.
And that's because I really believe that most broadcasters in our, really everywhere are good business people and doing a good job. And I haven't been picky about the clients that I've done work for, so I'm fortunate. I haven't had one that's taken advantage of me, but that's my tip: save parts for keeping what has to be kept on the air going. And when it comes to tube transmitters, just good filament management, and you can get good life out of tubes. And we've really learned how to do that. And it's important that the transmitter, not just, especially a tube transmitter, just not be expected to sit and run. If an engineer that knows how to keep those transmitters tuned and running efficiently does that, we can get good tube life. The other thing that I found real important on tube transmitters these days is have an inline watt meter on the output, because using the mathematical calculation to know where power is, if that transmitter is not working right and is not operating efficiently, you can be way off. So it's sure nice to have a watt meter on those tube transmitters. So, those are my tips as far as what have I learned to do and to make life easier down the line.
I totally agree. And the inline watt meter, and most of my sites with tube transmitters had those. I would add something to that, and that is, and you probably have this anyway, and that would be some kind of a temperature sensor on the output, on the exhaust output. And if you don't have a watt meter, if you use the indirect method and the temperature is what it should be, the temperature rise across the tube is what, then you have a good chance the rest of it's going out as RF. Right?
Right, exactly. And that's very true. Yeah. So that's the thing to watch when you don't. And that's important. At least a meat thermometer sitting there up there on the stack. And so one of the things that we do that we really enjoy doing is updating sites with new equipment. And I think if this is the right time to, you let in with the temperature monitoring, and I wrote down a few things that we really do like to do, and that's, have good remote monitoring. And more clients are updating their remote monitoring. And with today's technology, it's real easy to do that. And then we get to keep close watch on all the parameters of the transmitter, tower lights, a utility power generator, and then environment. And that's where stack temp comes in. So when we do an install with new modern remote control equipment, we always put a probe on the stack of, either the stack of a tube transmitter or even on the top of a solid state transmitter, just to know, is it generating more heat than it should? So we consider that one of our good engineering practices.
I would totally agree with that. Hey, I know we've mentioned this before, because it was really Chris Tarr who turned me on to putting cameras at transmitter sites. Now that we have internet available at many, if not most, if not all of our transmitter sites, I don't know how well this carries. Now it doesn't carry very well. Let me zoom up on this and see if we got any better. We buy a big $20 thermometer and stick it on the wall, right?
Wonderful.
And then the camera can see that thermometer, right? And so at other sites we've got it closer to the camera, but I can see that at WBZK, The Buzz in Oxford, Mississippi, it is 64 degrees Fahrenheit in the transmitter room. So that's hunky-dory.
Is that the site I remember someone posting a picture of that had a snake crawling over the top of the rack?
Oh, well, that's in Mississippi, but that's a difference. That's our, of all places, one of the smallest towns in Mississippi is Mound Bayou, Mississippi. This is a town that was founded by ex-slaves, and the town is basically all African-American. I mean, there's no white folks that live there. But we have not one, but two transmitter sites on the east side of that town. And so we call them Mound Bayou West and Mound Bayou East. And these two towers, if they fell toward each other, they would just about touch.
I'll be darned.
So, anyway, we shoot internet across the bean field with a couple of little tiny nano bridges from Ubiquiti.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Very cool.
Yeah, Larry Fuss caught a snake.
I remember that. Yes, that's what I
out the top
remember.
of the transmitter.
Yeah, and I've been fortunate. We've got we don't have, in most of the territory we service, we don't have anything but some garden snakes and things like that. So nothing venomous, especially close to home. But we do get out into the very north. It would be the northeast end of the Badlands, south of Bismarck, North Dakota, and I haven't run into any rattlers out there, but I'm told there are a few. So I'm not a fan of snakes. My son will chase snakes. I'll kill spiders.
Oh my gosh. So we can spend a few more minutes chatting about, what you like to make sure you get implemented. And we're welcome to name names just because we're all familiar with a lot of the different brands around here. Sure. What do you like to make sure you implement remote control wise at your transmitter sites?
Well, for quite some time now, we've pretty much exclusively been using the Burk remote control systems, so find them so versatile. And now with transmitters with SNMP, it just becomes so easy. The brand new one in Nimrod, Minnesota is that's the town where the new one finished up there today. One Cat5 cable for communicating all parameters, telemetry, remote control, and then one pair of wire for a fail-safe since there's a backup transmitter and transmitter switch there. But boy, is that nice having that ability. And the Burks are just so powerful and user-friendly. We just love them. So we've done quite a few. That's our go-to when we're upgrading clients' remote control. One little thing that we've learned to do, we didn't invent the idea, but we do it. My tech, Mark Anderson, has gotten quite good at building what we call Burk fan-out panels. We use a 24-port patch switch and fan out all the commands and telemetry. And in fact, each channel has one metering, one status, and a raise and a lower on a single Cat5. And it really makes remote control installations nice and neat, which is good. And also makes it easy to work on and change in the future because we'll mount that patch panel. Typically, if the rack has rails in the back, if need be, it can go in the front, but then you're not reaching in. Nothing worse than reaching inside of a rack trying to get little tiny wires on little tiny screws on the back of a remote control. So that's another tip. Anyway, yes.
Yeah, that is a great tip. I got a few sites that don't have rack rails with the screws, on in the back of the rack, and that is so helpful. There's a contract engineer, Mike Patton, and we have a site where quite a few years ago, we didn't have the Burks at the time. We had some leftover sign systems, and the remote panel for that, it just worked out a whole lot better for Mike Patton to put those on the rear. And somehow I need to look. I never looked to see. So he found some kind of a hinge arrangement for them.
Okay,
so you can undo the rack screws on one side and hinge it out, and then there are all the relays. And the sensor inputs right there.
Great idea. That's like the back end of Continental transmitters, the newer ones. They had the thumb screws that you could loosen and swing the panel out and get to the stuff that you used to have to reach all the way through from the front to get to. Yeah, that's a great idea for that. Leave it to Mike.
Yeah. Sometimes some great ideas there. And I'll tell you, now tell me how you handle this. And I always handle it very poorly. Mike Patton came in and put the overhead wire racks in a multi-transmitter site, and this just made it so good. Some of the coax was too big to run in that, but smaller coaxes would fit. Certainly Cat5s and other control wires would fit up there as well. Do you ever do that kind of overhead?
We do. Wire? Not a lot of new construction these days. Some. but a lot of, let's call it reconstruction. And here's an interesting story. How many AM radio stations that are directional do a complete rebuild? And here, a legacy radio station that's in the county seat of that Fosston, Minnesota, is in Polk County. Good client of ours, Chris Fee at KROX Radio, Crookston, Minnesota. Young broadcaster that has a career ahead of him, bought his dad's radio station and is doing a wonderful job in a small market. He recently completely rebuilt his transmitter site, brand new phaser, brand new ATUs. And so we did that to bring the cables into the building. We actually made our own cable ladders to bring them from the exterior over to the row where the phaser and transmitters are. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's just good engineering to have your cables in a good, neat way. Depending on the site, it may not be necessary. If it's like some, there might be open rafters in the ceiling, and then we'll hang them from there in a good way. But yeah, so we definitely like to do that, and in some rack room, server room builds, of course, when there's a lot of cables, you've got to do that. So yeah.
That's by the way, those are pretty good call letters there. KROX, K-Rocks.
Yeah. K-Rocks,
years ago,
absolutely.
Years ago, I did engineering for, and then later on, I ended up owning a piece of WROX in Clarksdale, Mississippi.
Yeah, absolutely. I've seen the call sign.
Hey, we're going to take a quick break for a commercial sponsor. And Jim, if you might be thinking about this sponsor, which is, Broadcaster General Store, and we're going to be talking about Henry Engineering and a product of theirs, but you may want to, at the end of the commercial, tell us about your favorite Henry Engineering product. They do make a lot of things, more than most people probably realize. But for now, let's have a look at something that Henry makes that I just love. And when I first heard about it, in fact, we had Hank Landsberg on the show a couple 3 years ago, and he talked about this product. And I didn't have a need for it right then, but boy, I sure came up with a need for it later on. And this is the Henry Engineering Back UPS, or maybe you want to call it the Backups. It's a power controller for ensuring reliable AC power to your critical equipment that's powered by a UPS. Now, Back UPS constantly monitors the output of the UPS, and it bypasses the UPS if its output fails or becomes unstable. It has two AC inputs, line, that's for your commercial power that's not on a UPS or maybe on a different UPS, and then it's got a UPS input. Line, you plug that into a local AC socket. UPS, you connect that to the output of the UPS, obviously. And if the Back UPS senses there's any interruption in that UPS output, it switches to line and it bypasses that UPS. It keeps the load powered up and allows the UPS to be disconnected for battery replacement or other maintenance. Now, I'll tell you where else this is really helpful. This is really helpful when you've got let's say some computers, or maybe a Sage or other EAS system. If you've got critical gear and that gear only comes with one power supply, like a computer, maybe at my stations, oftentimes we have play-out workstations that only have one power supply. Now, the server computer, the file server, has two. And of course, one of those gets plugged into the UPS and the other one gets plugged into either another UPS or directly to the commercial power. But the workstations themselves only have one power supply. So I put in this Back UPS fail-safe power switch, and I power, of course, one side with the UPS, the other side from commercial power. And that way, if the UPS fails, guess what? It switches over instantly over to the line input, and that workstation stays on. I have tested it over and over and over again. It works great. The Back UPS is, I think, rated for, about 15 amps or so. Let's see, 15 amps. It has a duplex outlet on the other side of it, and it's got some adjustment switches that let you change, the amount of time before it returns. It's fully automatic once you install it. The mode switch can select a manual UPS bypass mode or an automatic operation with or without the delay feature. And the Back UPS can also be remotely monitored and controlled. So DC output signal is provided to indicate when the UPS is online, and the remote bypass input allows the unit to be bypassed even by a GPS remote control. I love this thing. I didn't think I'd find it useful, and then bam, I found it very useful at my transmitter site. And I'll be putting more of these in where we have devices that only have one power supply, and we want to be able to, make sure that they're always on. And you can get the back UPS from Henry Engineering and any Henry Engineering product from Broadcasters General Store at bgs.cc. That's their website, bgs.cc. You can always call them, and I love to call them because they answer the phone and they talk to you at 352-622-7700. That's 352-622-7700. Jim, can I put you on the spot and ask you if you have a favorite Henry Engineering product?
You took the wind out of my sails. I got to admit that's the one right there. I was turned on to that by another engineer in a market not too terribly far from us, and have just fallen in love with them. Just a perfect product for that application. And we'd been looking for something as easy to install and simple as that is to do the job. And we put a number of them out. They're now a must-have on any rebuild that we do with UPS backup. Absolutely. We've used Henry products over the years since I began. I was in broadcast engineering, introduced to the Henry products. So, use the matchboxes, the USB matchbox, the DAs, all of those products. Very well built, very well engineered, very reliable. And now that UPS switch is another product that we'll be installing a lot of.
I was just at one of my stations a few weeks ago, and I was wondering, how does that tuner get over to the Axia node input? And let me follow that, because the tuner was an older Rolls brand tuner, and it didn't have the balanced outputs. It just had the RCA connectors. And so I followed. I thought, it's going through a Henry matchbox that I have forgotten about. It just sits there and runs for years.
Yeah, just runs and runs, don't they? Absolutely. Yeah. Good products.
Well, thanks again to Broadcaster General Store and Henry Engineering. So I'm Kirk Harnack. Our guest is Jim Offerdahl, and he is with, he's the senior broadcast engineer. That's because he's the oldest one in the building.
That's right.
Right. Jim, we've talked about a number of subjects. We still have a cool announcement coming up a little bit later in the show. But for the moment, I want to ask you about troubleshooting techniques. Now, I know you take care of some older gear, and maybe troubleshooting on that kind of gear hasn't changed much. It's a lot of good tribal knowledge that's been learned over the years. But with newer gear, or with maybe just since you and I are both so old and we know a lot, what are some of your troubleshooting techniques? Let's say you've been called to the transmitter site, you're on your way, you're in range of tuning in the station. What are some of the clues you start getting as you're getting close to the station?
Well, hey, we all know what that one is it's off the air, but I can hear it. Well, exciter's running. Okay, probably not the exciter. So, it's just the basics. It's, you always start with the power supply. That's where most of the problems end up being. Of course, tube transmitters, the parts that wear, tubes, motors, walk in a building. Is it noisy? Is the blower motor getting noisy? The transmitter's been going on and off. Are the air filters clean? Probably should change an air filter once in a while. Looks like this one hasn't been changed for 2 years, So, it's instinct there. And, troubleshooting tips, just got to work through it. It took me a while to really come to understand how to follow a schematic and start at the beginning. And if you got to go in and measure voltages. I just spent some time with a engineer that works for a client and out in Minot, North Dakota. And but by phone, I walked him through, and of course, it takes a certain guy that can understand and follow. And he'd probably tell us that he doesn't consider himself an engineer, but the work he did to follow directions and do the testing, we found a problem. Ended up actually being a mechanical problem with the high voltage contactor. But you just got to start at the beginning and work you through way through one step at a time until you find the problem. Sometimes it's tough. We got another one that has a high voltage plate supply trips, and we're still fighting with what's causing that, and trial and error. Sometimes you gotta just replace a component. If it's not a real expensive component, I say just replace it if you think it could be it. A contactor that costs over $1,000, we wanted to make sure that was the problem before we replaced it, but it was mechanical. It wasn't an open coil. It wasn't, what you'd expect. It's you just got to work through it from the beginning to the end until you find the problem.
I've got an example that can dovetail with what you're talking there, a little bit more modern example. I've got a transmitter site, and I won't name any names here, but the transmitter has an Ethernet connection to the outside world, to the local Ethernet switch. And the transmitter doesn't go off the air, but if you look at the logs, the log complains that it has lost its Ethernet connection. And every time it does this, it loses it for about 2 minutes. That's how long, 2 minutes on the log between losing it and it coming back. And it may go several days with no problem. And it may do it 3 times, 4 times in a day. And the manufacturer of the transmitter says, well, maybe you got a bad cable. Well, I don't think I have a bad cable. Maybe you have a bad port on your Ethernet switch. Well, okay, maybe. It's a brand new Ethernet switch. Could be a bad port, maybe. But you know what, Jim? I just decided, the Ethernet switch I'm using, it's a professional rack mount one, and it's manageable. It's a managed switch, but it's not that expensive. And I needed to have a spare anyway, so I just bought another one. And here at the office here where I am, I programmed it because I give it an IP address compatible and do a few more things to it. So this weekend, I'm taking it. I'm just going to swap out the Ethernet switch and see if the condition changes. I don't want to have to fix. It could be the controller in the transmitter. That could be the problem. And in fact, I kind of think that's what it is. But I'd rather be proven. I'd rather be proven wrong cheaply than go through a bunch of rigmarole and be right about it. So anyway, we'll see. We'll see.
In this day of troubleshooting the modern transmitters, it's easier in a certain regard because, you can remote in and you can see a lot of diagnostics in the remote interface. An issue like that, you just got to work through it again. Change the easy things. There's the switch. Change it out because, no, it's not a recognized problem by the manufacturer, and you got to get down to where you've eliminated all possibilities. And I've been there and I've done that. And I know just exactly what you're dealing with. I'm with you. I think you'll find out it's an issue with the controller, but before the manufacturer is probably ready to, if it's a warranty item, they'll back it up. All the manufacturers are good and offer great support, but they want us to make sure that we've done our job to know that we've eliminated anything outside of the transmitter before they send parts.
Talk to me a bit about, we haven't talked about studios very much. Your company involved with building and maintaining studios?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Yep.
What are some of the what are some of the systems that you like? What do you like to install? Do you make sure you have remote capabilities? You can help somebody troubleshoot a computer problem or something like that?
Yeah, we offer all that support. So, of course, starting in the business 20 years ago, none of the clients and the company here in town had AOIP, but of course we've grown into that and have done a number of AOIP studio build outs in the last number of years. But still analog. Did some analog rebuilds not terribly long ago. So we've done that. But we as long as the client wants us to, we actually offer supporting their PCs and get remote access where we can remote in, and if they've got and we have used exclusively the Axia product, and just love it. And Kirk, you've helped me with that, helped me learn that from the beginning. And when we have remote access to those things, one client was sold on the product because I told them we're going to be able to eliminate the need for expensive service calls by being able to do remote support, and we've been able to do just that for them and others that we've done that way. So yeah, still a lot of analog studios out there, and will probably be that way for a while, but a number of clients are when they're really ready to get rid of the old racks that I'll hopefully say I didn't wire, but you know how it is. They go through 30 years of different engineers coming and going, and they get pretty messy. So that's one thing I really enjoy. Yeah. I have an absolute ball going in and gutting out a rack and laying all the cable on the floor. And then I go and get the manager and I say, "Oh, these wires came loose and I don't know where to put them. Do you remember?" So no, there's nothing more fun than doing that and cleaning it all up and having a nice serviceable facility for the broadcaster for the next, if it's 20 years or whatever that might last. It's a lot of fun doing that.
It may have been after your first big job of ripping out old, unused, unnecessary wire. But I remember my first job of doing that. It was at WPAD in Paducah, Kentucky. And there had been years of this dear, sweet old engineer, but he never met a new wire he didn't just love to pull. And so the place had just gobs of wire. And I started, tracing each and every one, both ends, and seeing out what they did. And, after about a week of doing that, it dawned on me, Jim, and you see if my logic was correct or if I was, could have been made a terrible mistake. If one end of that wire didn't connect to anything, that wire wasn't doing anything, and it was no longer important, and I could just go ahead and pull it out.
Exactly. I learned the same thing. In fact, that very first contract client that Mark talked me into taking in Grand Forks got there. No documentation, and 5 radio stations all connected to the rack room, and no documentation at all. And I took a 3-ring binder and a bunch of paper and started drawing it out, and couldn't trace it all at once. But every time I had to go figure out what a circuit was, I said, I got to write this down. It's on this punch block in this room, and it goes to this one in this room. And eventually, I got what I needed to maintain that facility. However, that one has since built a brand new building and gone all AOIP. But definitely have done some of that.
We're going to take our last break. When we come back from this break, and by the way, I'm going to need you, Jim, during this break. When we come back from the break, we're going to have a little announcement that maybe it's a big announcement. We're going to have an announcement that Jim would like to make, and I think a lot of us in the industry will be glad to hear what Jim is about to tell us. So just hold your breath, take care. It's going to be 2 or 3 minutes from now. We'll begin that announcement process. Jim, one of our sponsors is a company that you know something about, and that's Angry Audio. I think both you and I are friends personally with Mike Dosh, and love to see his company succeed and do well. And I've got a little mic processor here, and it's okay. I've got it probably cranked up too much, but your mic sounds fantastic. You're using a Shure SM7B, but before it gets to your computer to be on this show, it's going through something else. Would you take a minute and tell us about what you're using for mic processing? Aha.
Of course, I have a 7B, and that is the Chameleon Smooth. And I don't know if we can see it, but I'll try, because I just got to brag about this. If we can see it, it is serial number 1.
Ah, yeah, over there. Yeah, serial number 1. Now, wait a minute.
I'm pretty proud of that.
I got a question. I see several XLR connectors on the back, but only one of them has something connected to it. What magic is this where you're only using one XLR connector?
Well, mic in, and then, of course, Catfish Studio Hub designed every one of his products now. So I'm coming out of it, Studio Hub, to Studio Hub in on the Angry Audio analog audio gadget, which, boy, oh boy, I'll tell you what, there was a godsend for interfacing PCs, the USB analog audio gizmo. I call it gadget, but that's the gizmo. And so that's all I'm doing coming out of that. And then it's USB from the gizmo to the PC, and works great. Absolutely. Putting a lot of those analog audio gizmos out these days for sure. And starting to sell some of the smooth processors as well as the Rebel too.
I owe a little explanation about the mic processor that you're using, the smooth processor. It's called smooth. The first two letters of the word smooth are SM, and it is meant for use with Shure microphones, SM microphones, because many of them use a very similar capsule, similar texture, and Corny Gould, my friend and yours, Corny Gould, designed the audio processing in this smooth processor specifically for SM series microphones. They can't guarantee how it'll sound on other stuff. They say, look, this isn't for everybody. It's for people that have an SM microphone from Shure, and the algorithms are designed to work that way. And it's very much set and forget. You know, it just does a beautiful job. It does have some controls. You can tweak it up and down some, but it's meant not to be fussed with. Once you get a few things set, especially input and output level, there you go. What else do you have to say about that processor?
Yeah. Well, what's so nice about it is, like you said, you set the input and the output, and then room, and Catfish called it room instead of gate, and it just makes sense. You just put your headphones on and listen, and you just turn it enough to have it be quiet, and it really does a nice job. I just love it. You know, I've used a number of other processors, some inexpensive ones, and I've never been a fan of processing. In fact, one of the clients that we took over for Mark Persons, his entire he owned 4 markets, and he would not have a mic processor, but he had literally every studio wall-to-wall foamed, and they sounded great. Well, these processors, in my opinion, take a room without acoustic treatment and make it sound like it's wall-to-wall foam. So they just and they're clean. They just sound so good. It's unbelievable.
That's so cool. That's cool. Hey, Angry Audio is the name. It's available from many broadcast distributors. In fact, we'll have a little announcement about that shortly. So check it out from angryaudio.com, and they have lots of other stuff that I've sung the praises of too. Hey, our show is also brought to you by Max Connect at MAXXKONNECT, maxconnect.com. That's Josh Bone and his company. And they kind of got put on the map by their Max Connect wireless service, and they still offer that. I've used it several times to really get myself out of a bind when I didn't have other internet service, and it worked great for us. The thing about Max Connect wireless service is that it works where in congested areas, a stadium full of people, you get some dedicated bandwidth and a fixed IP address. Well, now Max Connect is offering another product. It's called the U192. This is it's a USB sound card, if you will. By the way, it's sold by Max Connect. Its internals were designed by Mike Dosh at Angry Audio. But it's sold under the Max Connect banner, and it's an MPX USB sound card. If you are desirous of running your FM audio processor on a computer, and that computer can put out through USB the MPX signal digitally, well, this sound card is for you. For example, if you want to use something like the Omnia SST or the Stereo Tool processor, and I would think that this also works with the Breakaway processor. This will work for you. It's beautiful. You connect it to the USB, and then it will put out for you analog MPX, and you can go from that right into your FM exciter. It also puts out and takes in digital audio as well. So it's got several options going on there that you can set from the front panel. But this is the right way to do it. It was absolutely designed to put out a proper, pure MPX signal, an analog signal to go to your FM exciter from a PC. And by the way, if you have some qualms about using USB to do that, I got to tell you, USB has come a long way, and I do USB myself on several different applications at my stations, and we've had zero problems. We've never had a time where we've had to unplug the USB and plug it back in. There have been a lot of improvements, especially in the world of drivers for USB, and the drivers now that are built into Windows, for example, extremely stable. And they just tend to work. So if that's a qualm for you, put that aside. Check out this U192 MPX USB sound card from Max Connect. Thanks a lot, Josh Bone, Max Connect, for sponsoring This Week in Radio Tech. Okay, we've been teasing this announcement. And so, Jim, you, in addition to your engineering services, you also are a dealer for some equipment brands that you sell to your clients and to others. Tell us about that.
Yep. And we've been a reseller of equipment for a number of years. When I first got into the business, Mark Persons was doing that, and he was a dealer for a number of major brands. And then during that time, when it was a brand that Mark handled, we purchased it and had him sell it to our clients. But one day, Mark said, "I'm done. I'm going to retire." And Mark did. And he's busier than ever right now, volunteering and with all his hobbies. But in any case, so at that point, we picked up the lines that he was selling, and have been doing that for a number of years. And it was just sometime last year that I realized, and it really came about from my relationship with Michael Dosh and Catfish at Angry Audio, when we'd been buying product from them from day one. It actually goes back to the Dan Braverman days. My good friend Dan, who I got to know pretty well when Mark retired. Mark was a radio systems reseller. So when that change took place, we formed that relationship. And when Dan shocked the world and told them radio systems would be no more, and everyone panicked that we wouldn't get Studio Hub connectors, adapters anymore, of course, the truth is Catfish came to the table, and I came along with radio systems. And so we've had a good relationship with Catfish and the Angry Audio products, and they were referring some clients over to me because we actually were stocking a number of their products in our shop, and it occurred to me, there's a bigger market than just the clients we service. We would certainly sell our products to anyone that would like to buy them. So not quite a year ago, my son and I came up with a concept for a trademark, a brand name, and it's Radio Gearheads. And we kind of soft started it, created a website and a Facebook page, and promoted a little bit, and have had a little activity, and had been talking with some different people about taking on the real sales aspect of it, sales, marketing, and such, because I really don't have time to do a real job of that. Then a good friend of mine that I've known for a number of years, from back in his days at Broadcast Depot, and then his days at Broadcast Electronics, was my salesman, and John Lackness came along and was looking for a new thing to do here last month. And I pinged John and said, "How'd you like to pick up the sales management for Radio Gearheads?" And by gosh, John said, "I'd love to do it." And so he's actively pursuing the different equipment lines that he's familiar with selling in the past that we didn't already have. And of course, we have a good lineup of products already. So John is the announcement that John will be the National Sales Coordinator for Radio Gearheads, effective immediately. And you'll see our Facebook promotions of that some more, I'm sure. And we might have to do a little promoting here on TWiRT one of these days, too. And thank you for the opportunity to announce that here, Kirk.
Well, that's cool. I'm so glad, a lot of us in the industry like John Lackness, love John Lackness. He's always jovial, got good things to say at every trade show I see him at, and people who, and I don't know if I've been in his territories or not, but every dealing I've had with him has been good. So good. Glad to see him landing with another good guy, Jim Offerdahl. That's awesome.
Well, thanks,
awesome.
Kirk. Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Well, Jim, thanks for making the announcement here on This Week in Radio Tech. We appreciate that. And we got to go. Oh, if you got a tip of the week, you've given so many tips today. You got anything left in you, Jim? Or is that it?
What's the tip of the week? Well, it would be when you open up an old transmitter that's got 10,000 volts in it, don't forget to use the Jesus stick.
There you go. Don't use the Jesus stick or you'll meet him. That's right.
There you go. Absolutely.
All right. Thanks so much, Jim Offerdahl. He is the senior broadcast engineer at Offerdahl Engineering Services, and we appreciate very much Jim being with us. I hope Chris Tarr's okay. He hasn't checked in. I hope he's not in a ditch, but keeping it between the ditches. So let's hope that's the case. Maybe he'll be back next week. Speaking of next week on This Week in Radio Tech, let's see here. I'm sorry I didn't have my calendar right in front of me. Oh my goodness, next week, another great engineer where it's warm. Mike Sprzinski, Mike Spry, as many of us know Mike. Mike Sprzinski from Orlando, Florida is going to be our guest tomorrow, and he has got some cool things to tell us about engineering, what he's been doing lately. He can talk about that a little bit, and I think you're going to enjoy it along with me. So, again, thanks to Jim Offerdahl, and thanks to Suncast, our producer, really on top of things today. Really appreciate that. And thanks to Andrew Zarian, the founder of the GFQ Network, where you'll find other good podcasts. We'll see you next week on This Week in Radio Tech. Bye-bye.